Next, we have the session SDG number 17, Coronavirus and the Battle for a Collaborative Future by Ms Noha Hefny. Ms Noha is the founder and CEO of People of Impact, a social impact innovation platform and network helping people and organizations deliver social impact and advance the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Ms Noha is an award-winning humanitarian, corporate leader, and a serial social entrepreneur with 2 decades of global experience in social impact, communications, and strategic partnerships. He has worked for the leading organizations, including UN and UNHCR, UNESCO, and UN Women, and then in the private sector as regional director at PepsiCo and McKinsey and Company, heading departments including communications and corporate social responsibility. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ms. Noha Hefny. Over to you for your session.
Thank you very much, Aparna. It's a pleasure to be here. And so first of all, allow me to thank the organizers, Ms. Aparna Kumar and Santosh and all the team at the Global Council for Promotion of International Trade for the fantastic effort. I know that this is the closing chapter of, this, series of workshops on the SDGs. Having worked with this agenda for many years, I know that, there's so much strength in collaboration and dialogue, and you have done really a fantastic job to bring us all together in solidarity and unity to discuss the SDGs and the future of humanity and of the world, tackling each and every single SDG. So thank you very much. It's really an honor to be here. So today I'm going to be talking about SDG 17, and the title of my talk is Coronavirus and the Battle for a Collaborative Future. And allow me to start with introducing really the SDG framework. I know that many have done that, but to set the context for the discussion today, it's very important to highlight some key aspects of the agenda. So the goals, obviously, the deadline is 2030. And by then, we want to transform our world and to tackle its most important challenges. Many of my fellow speakers have tackled what these challenges are, including Polina and Dr. Kalyani, etc. And we can see that the magnitude of these challenges cannot be solved by one actor alone. So the most important thing to remember when we talk about partnerships is that the goals are universal, and they are for a call to action by all countries, whether developed or developing. But one of the most important principles is really the theme of the SDGs, which is leaving no one behind, which means that we need to be inclusive of all, and we need to realize the goals for every single human being on the planet. So having said that, it is very important to look at SDG 17 as the goal that will mobilize the efforts of all of us, whether we are government, private sector, individuals, civil society, or media, towards the implementation of all 17 goals. And what it is about is really mobilizing our efforts and the efforts of the international community to work together, to share expertise and knowledge, to further technological advances in order to enable solutions for the magnitude of the challenges that we are facing as humanity. It's also about mobilizing financial resources for developing countries from multiple sources so that we do not leave any countries or people behind. It is also about enhancing international support for implementing effective and targeted capacity building for developing countries. So when they say a revitalized global partnership to deliver on all of the goals, what is meant here is really we need to look at SDG 17 as the goal that facilitates intensive global engagement, bringing together all stakeholders and mobilizing and utilizing all available resources to transform the world for the better by 2030. So as mentioned, goal 17 is probably the most important goal amongst all SDGs because the rest of the goals depend on it. And in order to reach the 17 goals, government, the private sector, including MSMEs, academics, and even ordinary people need to work together. For everyone to benefit, everyone needs to contribute. And the UN, in this context, has defined 19 targets and 25 indicators for SDG 17, and they are grouped in 4 categories, namely finance, ICT advancement, capacity building, trade, and addressing systemic issues. So the targets specify the goals and indicators and represent the metrics by which the world aims to track whether these targets are achieved or not. So moving on to COVID-19, it is alarming. And to date, 4.94 million deaths in total around the world. This is the most current statistic that I picked up online today. We have also 243 million cases currently being treated across the world. So this is a global health emergency. It's not only impacting health, but it's also impacting international development. It is impacting economies. It is impacting livelihoods and overall health. And when we look at health, it is not just a mere issue. It is a human right. It is a human right that is being threatened at the moment as we move forward and navigate this pandemic. And when health is threatened, everything else is at risk. So the pandemic has really highlighted to us now more than ever the need for the world to come together in unity and in solidarity. And it's also shown us that issues that we confront, similar to the pandemic, are transcendent of border. No country can beat these challenges alone. We need global and international cooperation. So COVID-19 is really an opportunity to build back better in terms of recovery, to have more balanced and equal societies and a better world. Challenges are there and innovations are also there, and the SME sector provides a lot of innovation to address the goals. But we also need courage and bold commitments. We need to translate this momentum and our passion for the SDGs really into action, and we need collaboration for that to happen. Having said that, SDG 17 is really the only way forward to navigate the pandemic. Why? Because the global economy has been set back by 3% in 2020 alone. And global international cooperation will ensure that countries not only recover from the pandemic, but they are also able to get back on track with the SDGs. Because all of the progress achieved on the SDGs, on different SDGs, has regressed as a result of the pandemic. And again, no country can achieve that alone. One of the important targets under SDG 17 is 17.2, which is about implementing all development assistance commitment, ODA. So here again, the goal is very much about finance and supporting developing countries. It's about strengthening international development assistance and aid from developed to developing countries. But it's also about South-South cooperation, where developing countries support one another in different fields. And these fields are really around capacity building, finance, financial inclusion, technology, science, multi-stakeholder partnerships and voluntary commitments, trade, and national developing and supporting national sustainable development strategies across countries. So if we look at Goal 17, there is a role for everyone to play, countries, MSMEs, and the private sector at large, as well as other stakeholders. The important thing, though, to look at is that under this target, the UN has developed a key target for countries that they should devote 0.7 of their gross national income, GNI, to ODA. Okay, and ODA is defined as the government aid designed to promote the economic development and welfare of developing countries. And another target under the SDG is 17.3, which is that we need to mobilize financial resources for developing countries. But if we look really at the picture globally, we still have a lot of challenges. So in 2020, the UN managed to mobilize ODA at 161 billion, which was a record high across all the years. And this is as a result of the pandemic. But still, we are still short in massive numbers, which I will share shortly, of further aid to be able to ensure vaccine equity and reaching the most vulnerable with support during the crisis. On another level, when it comes to technology, you still have 3.7 billion people who are still not online. So again, here we have a great need from the private sector to intervene to support governments in this regard. And also, we have 63% of low income and lower middle income countries in need of additional financing for data and statistics. So the lack of data and the lack of statistics prevalent across many developing countries, and also the fact that this data is not always disaggregated by age, sex, or gender, etc., and other factors, is limiting our ability to really provide relevant development assistance. So these are all areas that are tackled by SDG 17. So now I just want to share, with regards to COVID-19 recovery and response, a call from the Secretary General to highlight the importance of global solidarity and international cooperation and a coordinated response to the crisis. And this is a video from July 2020, asking countries to really step up to ensure that they can meet SDG 17 targets and support developing countries in terms of financial aid to address the pandemic.
The coronavirus continues to spread around the world. In the world's poorest countries, the health crisis is being compounded by a serious humanitarian crisis. Now, the General Secretary of the United Nations is speaking out against the lack of solidarity.
To respond to the dramatic economic and social consequences of the COVID and to effectively address the COVID globally, we would need a package corresponding to more than 10% of the global economy, which means trillions. And we see those trillions being spent by developed countries in the United States, in Europe, but we do not see the mobilization of resources to support the developing countries to do the same.
10 billion euros. And at a time when many nations have chosen to act in self-interest, the UN chief has pleaded for unity in fighting the pandemic.
Most of the most dramatic situations that we see in the world are exactly where populist governments were totally unable to face COVID in an effective way. So my hope is that as COVID moves away and that we build back, my hope is that people will feel that indeed we need unity, that indeed we need solidarity, we need international cooperation, and that we need a global governance with multilateral institutions much stronger than in the present.
The United Nations has asked its wealthiest members to give $10 billion in relief funding, but so far it's received less than a fifth of that amount. Ryan Thompson, Euronews.
Okay, so as we can see from this video, countries that are part of the Donor Assistance Committee have not bridged the gap required to address the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is because, there was a great focus on addressing the pandemic within their own countries. So the cost of ending COVID is less than a third of what the DAC countries spent on ODA in 2020. The names of the countries are listed on the screen. And the target, the assistance provided is at $161 billion. However, we are still short of 50 billion. ODA was also equivalent to a very small fraction of that country domestic fiscal measures. So internally, these countries have spent $11.7 trillion on COVID-19 response. However, when we compare this figure to the 161 billion provided, again, we are not meeting our targets under SDG 17. Development cooperation providers are being called on to do more to address increasing needs. So at the moment, we really need, the world needs $3.7 trillion to address the impact of the pandemic and to address the pandemic health needs. But again, we only are at $161 billion at the moment. So this is just to, really demonstrate the need for global collaboration, because maybe the money will not only come from governments, but it needs to come also from the private sector and from other sources. About equal distribution of the vaccine, and this touches on the principle of leaving no one behind in SDG 17 and all the goals, the slogan of the SDGs. So we need to ensure reaching the most vulnerable people in the planet.
The COVID-19 pandemic continues to devastate our world, claiming more than 4 million lives. The remarkable rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines offers great hope. These vaccines need to reach everyone, everywhere as quickly as possible. This is a matter of fairness and justice, but it is also critical to avoid the emergence of further variants that can resist the current vaccines and undermine national vaccination efforts. Overall, we need more than 11 billion doses to vaccinate 70% of the global population, a key threshold to ending the acute phase of this pandemic. This will take the largest public health effort in history. The world needs a global vaccination plan to at least double production of vaccines and ensure equitable distribution using COVAX as the platform. We also need an emergency task force at G20 level to coordinate this implementation. Thank you.
As we can see, global coordination and cooperation and partnerships is the way forward. A global response to the pandemic is needed. And it is not only really about money or financial support for different countries. Collaboration and cooperation go beyond that. They go into really mobilizing technology development and, for example, scientific developments as well. So without scientific and innovation, we couldn't have come up with the vaccines for COVID-19, for instance, or any other areas. We need capacity building. We need to build the capacity of NGOs. We need to build the capacity in terms of education and transforming the education system, for example, to meet the requirements and the new changes that have been implicated by the pandemic. So for that, we need to really have multi-stakeholder partnerships. It is not enough to work with one stakeholder. We need multi-stakeholder partnerships to really advance the interconnection between the goals. This is number one. We need to work across sectors in order to pool resources and to really advance those areas. And this is not only an agenda for government, but also an agenda for academia. We need data and insights. We need corporates to step in on the innovation side, as well as MSMEs and individuals as well. So on the private sector front, there is a very big role to play in response to the pandemic. So first of all, the most important thing is really protecting our people and our stakeholders. And by saying that, is how did employers during the pandemic react, to the needs of their employees, their staff, their community, their suppliers. And this is very important, protecting health. The other thing was protecting jobs and livelihoods. So many companies have restructured, many companies, many people faced job losses, but how this has been done and how it was done with ethics, integrity, and following, fair procedures is very important. Supporting the WHO and the United Nations and also civil society and addressing the effect of the pandemic is a key role for the private sector and MSMEs. Protecting your own business. And in that sense, we need the economy to continue to thrive. So also protecting the business, putting business continuity plans in place and ensuring business continuity during these emergencies is very important. Prioritizing the supply chain continuity. So when there was lockdown, we saw a lot of businesses needing to source locally. So that also revitalizes local economies, empowers local suppliers, and perhaps on the long term, it is best, to look at models that can further develop, the capacity of these local suppliers and continue to supply from them to boost local economies. On essential supplies, we saw a lot of businesses really supporting the production of supplies for the pandemic, like masks and other ventilators and other things, or contributing finances to purchase these goods to support developing countries or countries at risk. Repurpose production facilities to support this health crisis, provide in-kind contributions to civil society and to the UN and to the international community in trying to address the pandemic, and making supply and services available. And last but not least, really being an intricate part of a community. So businesses, integrating the SDGs into their model and serving the community as a priority, ensuring we leave no one behind, ensuring they act on SDG 17 are the businesses that will survive and that will thrive in the future. Because people and millennials particularly and other populations are looking at the role of business as more and more important in terms of addressing social needs. The last closing slide that I want to share is about the role of people. And this is very important because when we talk about the SDG agenda, we always talk about business, we always talk about governments, but people also have a role to play. And this starts with sharing your voice and sharing your voice on the future and how you would like to see it, because more and more policymakers, private sector leaders are looking for this participatory dialogue in order to shape policies and interventions. So during the UN 75th anniversary, which was again celebrated in September 2020, by September, the UN did a global consultation asking people to tell the organization what are, the priorities that they would like the world to focus on moving forward. And 1 million people around the world took part in that. When we look at the global population of the world, we wish that it was more. But really, the key findings there that people around the world, these 1 million people, want to see is that amidst this current crisis, the immediate priority will be to look at improved access to basic services, including healthcare, safe water, sanitation, and education. The next main thing will be around greater international solidarity and increased support to the places that are hardest hit by the pandemic, including tackling poverties, inequalities, and boosting unemployment. And then the next priority was, yes, health is the most pressing issue at the moment, but people are hopeful that we can look at access to education and women's rights as key top priorities that they would like to see improvement on. And again, when I look at these three findings, SMEs, private sector, everybody really has a role to play. We can all advance women's rights. We can all work on, advancing education or providing access to education by supporting communities. We can all look at our role in this international solidarity and collaboration. So people around us, our stakeholders and the people we serve, our customers, if we are consumer-centric businesses, are looking at us and they are thinking big. They are looking at the future and expressing an intense yearning for international cooperation. They want to be part of the solutions that we devise as companies and as governments. So now is the time to respond really to these aspirations, and SDG 17 is the right way forward for that. So to build a better world, we all need to be supportive, empathetic to others and to each other, inventive and innovative, passionate, and above all, cooperative. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Noha, for that very informative session. And thank you for demonstrating what you said by being a partner in this summit. Thank you so much for all the support you have been giving to GCPIT from the beginning of the summit. And looking forward to working with you.
My honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Looking forward to working with you in the future as well. Now we'll take a short